What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of On the Pond Hockey Talk with your host, Adam Steer. Now, today, I am very excited to announce part 3 of the 4-part Seattle Kraken mock expansion draft roster, where I go through each of the divisions within the NHL and share my picks on who I believe each team is going to protect, expose, and ultimately lose to Seattle in the expansion draft. I have my Toronto Maple Leafs JVR 21 jersey on because we are talking about the Atlantic Division today. We've already gone over the Pacific and Central, and now we are going to be covering the Atlantic Division. So with that being said, let's get into it. So first up here, we have the Boston Bruins. So I have Boston protecting 7 forwards, 3 defensemen, and 1 goalie. The forwards I have them keeping are David Krejci, Patrice Bergeron, David Pastrnak, Brad Marchand, Charlie Coyle, Jake DeBrusk, and Andre Kashe. So I was debating between Kashe and Smith, but I ultimately have them protecting Kashe because of his youth and still upside that he still has as a player. So ultimately here, you see that I have the Boston Bruins losing center Trent Frederick in the expansion draft to the Seattle Kraken. Frederick was a 2016 first round pick, 29th overall, to the Boston Bruins. And unfortunately, they have a lot of good forwards on the roster still that are young and have produced at a high level. So I have them taking Trent Frederick in the draft. So looking at the back end of the Boston Bruins here, there's some pretty obvious choices for them to keep. I have them protecting Charlie Coyle, Matt Grzelcyk, and Brandon Carlo. Now with the loss of Torrey Krug and the unknown situation with Zdeno Chara, it's likely he's not coming back. They're losing those 2 defensemen, which means all 3 of these guys are going to play an elevated role on this team. And I believe that all 3 of these players will step up when the time comes because they've proven they could do it in the past. And, you look at the last few years with all of these 3 defensemen, they've all really stepped up in their own way. So again, I have McAvoy, Grzelcyk, and Carlo being kept. And looking at the goaltending here, I have them protecting Tuukka Rask. I know there's talks about him retiring, but for right now, you can't leave that guy unprotected. You need him as your starting goalie if he's going to play for you. So I have the Boston Bruins ultimately losing Trent Frederick to the Seattle Kraken. So now we are going to be looking at the Buffalo Sabres. So like Boston, I have them protecting 7 forwards, 3 defensemen, and 1 goalie. Up front, I have them keeping Jack Eichel, Jeff Skinner, yikes, $9 million, that is a lot. Taylor Hall, Sam Reinhart, Victor Olofsson, Rasmus Asplund, and Casey Middlestat. Now, I know Hall is a very interesting player in the sense that he only signed a 1-year deal, but I'm pretty optimistic that they're going to be able to sign him long term. I mean, we don't know, but for right now, I'm going to assume that they're going to do everything in their power to land him long term. So I'm going to keep him there for now. And also with Buffalo, it's very important that they keep and protect the young core of this team up front with guys like Reinhart, Olofsson, Asplund, and Middlestat. So now we're going to be looking at the back end. So now looking at the blue line of the Buffalo Sabres, it is definitely looking a lot more interesting compared to the forward group. I have them protecting Jake McCabe, Henry Jokiharju, and Rasmus Dahlin. Now, you're going to see Rasmus Ristolainen highlighted in green here. Yes, I have the Seattle Kraken taking Rasmus Ristolainen from the Buffalo Sabres. I feel like he spent a lot of years in Buffalo, and unfortunately, it just hasn't worked out to the way that I think Sabres and Sabre fans wanted. And I think he needs a change. I think Buffalo needs a change from him. They have other young defensemen coming in like Jokiharju, and Dahlin's becoming a superstar in the league, and they still have Montour, who we're not sure what's going to happen with him. So I definitely think that Ristolainen is the guy that they take. And obviously, Linus Ullmark is the goalie they're 100% keeping. There's no way around that. So as you see here, Rasmus Ristolainen is my pick for who I think Seattle is going to take from Buffalo. Now looking at the Detroit Red Wings here, I have them protecting 7 forwards, 3 defensemen, and 1 goalie, just like Buffalo and Boston. So up front, I have them keeping Dylan Larkin, Anthony Mantha, Tyler Bertuzzi, Robbie Fabry, Vladislav Nemesnikov, Michael Rasmussen, and Evgeny Svechnikov. So up front, I think it's a pretty clear list here. You can debate, who you could take, at the end. Maybe you don't take a Svechnikov or you don't take a Nemesnikov because you don't know if they're going to stay on the roster long term. But ultimately, these are the guys I have them protecting. And you see here, Taro Hirose is the guy I have Seattle taking from Detroit. I think the fact that Detroit has their top 6 already and Hirose is a skilled player with the likes of Raymond and Zadina coming onto the roster very soon, especially Zadina this season, I think Hirose is ultimately going to be one of the odd men out, and I think Seattle is going to take him in the expansion draft. Now looking at the blue line for the Red Wings, I think it's important for them to go extremely young here, considering they don't have a lot of young, solid defensemen. So on the back end, I have them protecting Troy Stetcher, Dennis Cholowski, and Philip Ronick. I think Ronick showed last year that he could be a power play one guy in the league, and he did have a bit of a breakout season in that respect. And in net, I have them protecting Thomas Greiss. Greiss has shown in the past to be a very reliable goaltender, and I think they would keep him definitely over Bernier given the chance. But ultimately, I have Detroit losing Taro Hirose in the expansion draft. So now looking at Florida, I have them also protecting 7 forwards, 3 defensemen, and 1 goalie. We're really starting to see a trend here. However, the forwards I have the Panthers protecting are Alex Barkov, Jonathan Huberdeau, Brett Connolly, Frank Vetrano, Alexander Wenberg, Noel Achari, and Henrik Borgstrom. These seem like pretty easy choices to me. I, really don't see them moving too far off this list. If they were to keep anyone else, maybe they keep Alexis Serle. But I think moving on, we're going to see, the back end because that's going to be the very intriguing part with Florida. So these are all of the forwards I have Florida protecting. So now looking at the back end of the Florida Panthers here, I have them protecting Aaron Ekblad, Keith Yandel, and Mackenzie Weegar. And in net, I have them protecting Sergei Bobrovsky. Bobrovsky, they have to keep. They don't have a choice whether they want to or not. After they sign him to that monster deal, there's no way Seattle would ever take him on, even if they didn't protect Bobrovsky in the expansion draft. So you see highlighted in green here, I have Riley Stillman. Now, Stillman was a guy who played a lot of minutes last year for Florida as a 22-year-old, 21-year-old rookie defenseman in the NHL. I think he was playing around 19 minutes a game and was playing some pretty solid minutes for their team, considering they were in the hunt for a playoff spot. So I think that's reason enough for Seattle to say, hey, we want that guy. So I have Seattle taking Riley Stillman from the Florida Panthers. So now we are going to be looking at Montreal here. So for Montreal, just like every other team so far that we've covered, I have them protecting 7 forwards, 3 defensemen, and 1 goalie. Up front for the forwards, I have them protecting newly acquired and signed Josh Anderson, Jonathan Drouin, Tyler Toffoli, Brendan Gallagher, Philip Deneau, Joel Armia, and Jesperi Kotkaniemi. So I think this is pretty clear cut for the Montreal Canadiens. I don't see Tatar being on the team past this season. And Lekkonen's a guy that I think Seattle will consider taking in the expansion draft, but ultimately I think there will be better choices for them to take. So now we are going to be looking at the blue line and goaltending. So now, looking at the back end of the Montreal Canadiens, I think this is where it gets very, very interesting with this team. I have them protecting Shea Weber, Jeff Petrie, and Cale Fleury. I think with Cale Fleury, it's important for them to keep him over a guy like Sherratt, for example, because they don't have a lot of 22-year-old right-shot defensemen on the roster that have NHL experience. So I think the fact that he's young and a little more controllable, I think is reason enough for them to protect him. And then looking at the goaltending, I have obviously Carey Price they're going to protect, but Jake Allen highlighted in green. I do in fact have the Seattle Kraken taking Jake Allen. I think the fact that he's going to be a backup goalie for Montreal, his stats are going to be very good, and Seattle's going to see that and say, okay, hypothetically, we have Braden Holtby, which I have them taking. Let's add Jake Allen to the mix. So now they have 2 very solid goaltenders to help form their team, which is why I ultimately have the Seattle Kraken taking Jake Allen from the Montreal Canadiens. Now, we're going to be looking at the Ottawa Senators. Now, this forward group was one of the most interesting groups to dissect because they have a combination of older and younger players where they're going to really choose which pathway they want to go. I think it's clear they're going to go with the younger talent that they want to protect. So looking at Ottawa here, I have them protecting, like everyone else, 7 forwards, 3D, and 1 goalie. So up front, I have them protecting Colin White, Connor Brown, Chris Tierney, Alex Galchenyuk, Brady Tkachuk, Logan Brown, and Drake Batherson. So I think all these forwards are pretty easy for the most part. I know Dadonov, seeing here not highlighted, might be a little bit of a surprise, but I think if you're Ottawa, you have this rebuild. You have to continue to the rebuild. It's not worth keeping Dadonov to risk losing one of your really good young studs like a Drake Batherson, for example. And you see here in green, I have highlighted Philip Chalapik. Philip Chalapik is a very strong two-way center that is still young. Unfortunately, he lacks NHL experience, so it would be interesting to see if Chalapik did get NHL playing time, what would happen. So you see here, ultimately, I think Seattle takes Philip Chalapik from Ottawa. So now, looking at the back end of the Ottawa Senators, I have them protecting Thomas Chabot. Chabot is clearly like above and beyond everyone else on this team right now. He's the only defenseman I think they really need to keep. If they lost anyone else, it wouldn't really be a big deal at all. But again, I have them protecting Thomas Chabot, Josh Brown, and Maxime Lajoie. Again, all young defensemen. Now, looking at the goaltenders, I have them protecting newly acquired and signed Matt Murray. They acquired him from Matt Murray at the draft, and they paid him that nice contract where he's making $6.25 million a year. So you saw before, guys, with the forwards, I have Seattle taking Philip Chlapik from the Ottawa Senators. So now we have the reigning Stanley Cup champion Tampa Bay Lightning. So again, I have the Lightning protecting 7 forwards, 3 defensemen, and 1 goalie. So up front, I have them protecting, obviously, no-brainers, Nikita Kucherov, Steven Stamkos, and Braden Point. They're the 3 superstar forwards on this team. They're all being kept. I also have them protecting Andre Palat, Alex Killorn, Anthony Cirelli, who I think is going to sign very soon, and Matthew Joseph. So again, these are the forwards I have them keeping. I highly doubt that Barclay Goodrow and Blake Coleman are going to remain on this team. I think both these players are going to be due for pay raises after next season. So again, these are the forwards I have them keeping. Now looking at the back end, another very interesting blue line group. Defensemen I have them protecting are Victor Hedman, Ryan McDonagh, and Mikhail Sergachev, which means I have Erik Chernak ultimately being exposed to Seattle in the expansion draft. And if he's made available and there's no trade between Tampa Bay and Seattle for any other player, such as a Tyler Johnson for a draft pick, for example, I have Seattle taking Erik Chernak. I think the fact that Chernak is a bigger defenseman who's a right shot, who's currently 23 years old, he just signed a new contract today. I think that he would be a great ad for Seattle, considering he just won a Stanley Cup in Tampa Bay. So that's going to add tons of tremendous value in what goes into winning a Stanley Cup, especially the Stanley Cup that Tampa Bay won during the pandemic. And you see in net, I have the Lightning protecting Andrei Vasilevsky. That's their star goalie, won them a cup. They're not moving off him anytime soon. So again, I have the Seattle Kraken taking Erik Chernak from the Tampa Bay Lightning. Now we are going to be looking at the Toronto Maple Leafs. So for the Leafs, like every other team in this video, I have protecting 7 forwards, 3 defensemen, and a goalie. Up front, I think there's 6 clear-cut picks, and then a 7th one that could go either way. But for right now, I have the Leafs protecting Austin Matthews, John Tavares, Mitch Marner, William Nylander, Alex Kerfoot, Zach Hyman, and Pierre Engvall. Engvall was the only player I wasn't sure if they were going to protect, whether they would go cheaper with a guy like Joey Anderson, but ultimately I have them keeping Pierre Engvall as well as the other 6 players on this list. Now, looking at the new and improved defensive core of the Toronto Maple Leafs, on the defense core, I have them protecting Jake Muzzin, Morgan Riley, and TJ Brodie. These are clear-cut, they're top 3 defensemen. There's no debating it. And in net, I have them protecting Frederik Andersen. Now, I know that he's going to be a UFA, but I'm confident that the Leafs are going to re-sign him. I personally don't see a better goaltender that's going to be available next season for the Leafs that's better than Frederik Andersen, which is why I believe it makes sense. I really don't think they're going to go with Jack Campbell as a starting goalie yet. Who knows what's going to happen, though? But ultimately, I have them protecting Frederik Andersen. So you see here, guys, highlighted in green, I have the Leafs losing Travis Dermott to Seattle. Now, Dermott is a very young defenseman that is a two-way guy, but I think has shown that he can be an offensive defenseman if given the opportunity. He has had some big plays in the playoffs for the Leafs before, and he had a pretty decent run, I believe, against Columbus in the play-in round this year. But ultimately, with the fact that Riley, Brodie, and Muzzin are going to be kept, I don't believe that there's a spot for Dermott on this team, especially looking at, how Rasmus Sandin has grown over the course of his rookie season. So ultimately, I have the Seattle Kraken selecting Travis Dermott from the Toronto Maple Leafs. That is it for today, everyone. Thank you very much for watching this video, and if you enjoyed it, please hit that like and subscribe button down below for more content. Over the next few days, I'm going to be sharing my part 4 of the Seattle Kraken mock expansion draft roster series, as well as giving you all my World Junior Championship predictions for who I think is going to win the tournament. So stay tuned for more content, everyone, and have a great day.